Hey there, Chad here for the AI Content Dojo. In this video, I want to show you how to create a sort of frequently asked questions or just a Q&A that you might use for either for SEO purposes or to just create really useful content for your reader, something that is on point and on topic for your niche and whatever the purpose of your website is. Excuse me. And I've already kind of started the document because I didn't want to have to show you things that I've already showed you a few times in previous videos. But just to catch you up real quick, basically, first we need questions, right? Like, what are we going to answer? So luckily, Shortly is really good at coming up with questions for your topic. In this case, I'm going to be using Working from Home, which is my side project that I use as sort of a case study going forward for most of these videos that you'll probably see. So this probably isn't your first time seeing the whole working from home niche being talked about, but if it is, that's why I'm doing it. And this video, we're going to kind of show another. I'm going to show you a couple of ways of answering the questions, really. One of them probably being the technically right way to do it, and the other one being like the quick way to do it, I guess. And so, first, let me catch you up here a little bit. This list of questions came from this command: instruct, give me some questions about working from home. And I ran it a couple of times to get this list of questions. And let's go ahead and just remove that. Okay, so you might choose, or I would recommend that you actually look through the list of questions and kind of make sure that, you know, I guess what I'm trying to say is you probably don't want to just have an article that is just loaded with questions about working from home, like all in one article. You're probably going to find that there's a little bit of subcategorization, or focus that you should probably create articles about separately. For instance, how many hours a day can I work remotely? You know, there's probably some amount of other questions that would be related to this that you would kind of group together and then put into its own separate article. How can I stay focused in a home office would be a good one that would probably warrant its own separate article, because it's going to have things like environmental factors, kids, all that kind of stuff with being focused while you're working from home in your own home office. And so just lumping a whole bunch of questions all together into one article, probably not the best thing. I would suggest kind of cleaning it up and making some rhyme and reason to it. Remember, you're creating an article that's for someone to gain some knowledge from, especially in this case where you're creating an article that's answering questions that people would be asking about this topic. And so having a nice flow, a nice narrative thread as you go through your article is important for creating an actually high quality article. Okay, with that said, how do we get the answers to these questions? I mean, first, you should be the subject matter expert of the topic that you're writing about, or at least you don't necessarily have to be like, I guess, the wise old sage of it, where you've spent decades learning about it and whatever, but you should have at least have a good familiarity with it and have spent some time studying it to the point where you can actually write something about it too, instead of just picking a topic out of the blue and just auto-generating content about it. It's probably not going to end up so useful for your reader. But let's say that is it possible to work from home? The first way I'd say is the good way, the proper way to answer this would be to do the dance with the AI. That means you start the answer and then you let the AI kind of finish it. So, is it possible to work from home? Yes, of course it is possible to. And I'm assuming, as you can probably guess, if I choose Write For Me right now, it's probably going to say, of course it is possible to work from home, but then what else is it going to give us? Look at that. That is excellent. I mean, that's just, I mean, something like that is probably what I would have written. Maybe not to that degree, but it's given me a lot of good content to think about. In fact, there are ever increasing number of people who have left their office jobs and work remotely from home in order to spend more time with their family or to live a more sustainable lifestyle. More time with the family leads to, let's see what the AI gives us. Yep. It even gives us another question. I'd say that's very good output. I like that. It gives us another question. It actually started on the answer too. Now, why did it do that? Partly because it sees the pattern. When I click Write for Me, which I clicked probably where? Right about leads to, I clicked it right about here, right? It has this to use as the context. That means there's a dash question with an answer. So what did it do? It did a dash question with an answer. And since it kind of already wrote all of this stuff and then led to that, it didn't have any room because the OpenAI doesn't want like scalable auto generation of articles. And so what it's doing is it prevents tools like Shortly from bringing back a ton of content at one time. And so what you're seeing here is that it kind of ran out of time in a sense. Plus I have it set on a little. So it's going to require me to hit Write for Me again to get more of an answer out of that. But don't just hit Write for Me and Write for Me and Write for Me one after another. Spend some time to read what it gave you and then write a little bit more to kind of lead the AI, to do the dance with the AI, and then hit Write for Me when you think that it's going to take over and finish that thought how you want it to be finished, and then wait for the serendipity afterwards with the extra stuff that kind of just gives you that like extra boost to your content. And so you would just do this through all of your questions there to come up with a page that's full of answers to questions. Let's skip down to one. How many hours a day can I work remotely? I mean, that's going to be a something for, it's an individual per person. What are the pros and cons of working from home? Let's do this. What are the pros and cons from working from home would be answered in another way. We can use the instruct command, and we can just say, give me an answer for, and let's just paste in that question. Let me get some space here. And when I run this, I'm going to use Shift Command Enter so that it keeps the command there so you can see it. We should get an answer for what are the pros and cons of working from home. Look at that. It even made it into a nice little bullet list. That is pretty cool. Weak security. Yep, that can be kind of scary. Lack of security cameras. See, and I might not have ever thought of that, as like, I would have thought of maybe, people, maybe being a little laxed on that, but not really like so specific. Lack of security cameras and stuff. Yeah. Pros, definitely less commuting time and stress. It's nice. Unless you're working for one of those companies that wants to like install tracking applications on your computer and watch every keystroke and have a camera that watches you work and all that. That would be stressful as hell. But anyway, so the instruct command, give me an answer for, and then whatever your question is. And OpenAI, Shortly should come back with an answer for you. Now, when you do it this way, I still highly recommend you read through it and kind of tweak the copy to meet your tone, your voice, how you like to write, or maybe the image of your company to make sure you're kind of staying on message, keeping that narrative thread going, so to speak. And I think you can kind of see here that what will happen is eventually you'll get to the point where you have a nice full page of Q&A going on. And, to kind of come back to a previous video about creating these questions are really good, aren't they? They're not like the people also ask questions. Like I know that's probably one of the things that we kind of did in the past was like we'd go and we'd look for what does Google think that people are asking over and over again, so that we think that there's a lot of traffic to it, and so on, and then we'll target that just because there's seemingly enough traffic for it to warrant writing about. Therefore, We might get more traffic to our website if we win some rankings in Google for it. And I don't know, it just seems so artificial to me doing it that way, which sounds kind of weird because I'm using artificial intelligence to create these questions. I get the sort of irony there, but it's the style of these questions just feels like to me something that like people really ask. Actually ask these questions, not just it's not so data driven, if you know what I mean. It's not so robotic feeling. Which is, I guess, in a sense, that's kind of what artificial intelligence is trying to do, right? It's trying to create a narrative version of a robotic output in a sense. So I think it does a really good job, and Shortly has some fantastic tools, as you can see, to get a list of questions and then also answer them all. So if you wanted to just blast through it really quick, generate 50 questions, maybe collate them into some sort of subsections where they all kind of grouped together and made sense, and then went through and added a ton of answers. Of course, doing it with the dance to make sure that you're providing not only the artificial intelligence written text, but also your own, and kind of keeping it on story and on point with what you want to answer to your reader. You're going to end up with an article that is helpful, is actually helpful, and not just an article full of content. Just because you can, because the AI is helping you. I know that I probably say this too often, and it's starting to become in every video, but I see it happening quite a lot where people will just write just because they can now with these tools, right? And just kind of generate content. I think there needs to be a little bit more focus on the reader. Like, think about the reader when you're writing this. Don't just, I know it's exciting, it's cool, it's really fun to write with these tools and just see what happens, and you keep going and you end up with a 3,000, 4,000 word article. But I feel like attention is important too, and people aren't going to spend, some will, but I don't think a lot of people are going to spend a lot of time reading through a 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 word article just because you could create it. And probably spend a little bit of time focusing on how you want to structure your content and how you want to divide it into smaller articles that really punch, hit that point, the exact reason, the intent that reader wants from the article. And I think you'll do much better. You can generate those just as quickly, but keep it on point and on focus, focused for your reader. Anyway, that's how you would create a Q&A really quickly using AI, using Shortly AI, and this really awesome blank canvas. I know that it's a little tricky to get into Shortly, but once you start getting into it and you learn these little cool, ways of doing things, you can work really fast. And I highly suggest you pick it up. And if you're not subscribed to Shortly, if you haven't purchased it, if you purchase it using the link in the comments or in the show notes below, they will provide a little bit of a commission to support the AI Content Dojo, and I would really appreciate it. There'll be at no extra cost to you, of course. It's just something that I've worked out with Shortly to help us out, and so I can keep creating content like this to help you write better with these AI tools. Also, if you go over to Facebook and do a search for AI Content Dojo, you're going to find our Facebook group where it's just full of ninjas helping each other make the most of these AI tools. Not purely focused on Shortly. It's anything AI related as far as content creation goes. And actually a little bit others. We'll talk about marketing strategies and stuff like that too. Anything kind of like online business related works is fine with me. But I hope to see you there. And until next time, take care.